I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me.
This was terrible. It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election.
Hillary Clinton and FBI Director James Comey on the role the FBI investigation of Clinton's private email server played in the 2016 presidential race. And we're back now with the panel. So, Brit, how much responsibility do you think James Comey really bears for Clinton's defeat, especially his announcement that he was reopening the investigation 11 days before the election?
Well, you can argue that flat or argue it round, Chris. I think it had a limited effect. I don't think it was a main factor. But look at it. You can look at it this way as well. The case he laid out that he said was not the basis for a prosecution could very well have been, as numerous legal authorities have argued about that. So it's possible he could have recommended an indictment, which was obviously would have been devastating. He didn't do that. A lot of people think he let her off the hook. So you can argue it that way as well. Obviously, this whole involvement didn't help. This whole investigation did not help. But whose fault was that? It was the person who had the unauthorized system for the use of her emails. That was the original sin of this matter, and that was what, in the end, this was all about.
In his congressional testimony, Comey said that he faced two terrible alternatives.
I stared at speak and conceal. Speak would be really bad. There's an election in 11 days. Lordy, that would be really bad. Concealing, in my view, would be catastrophic.
Congresswoman Harman, the argument that Comey makes is that if they had not revealed this, she had been elected president, and then it comes out that there is an investigation going on, let alone that she'd broken the law, that would have badly damaged the FBI.
Well, Comey had a great chapter in John Ashcroft's hospital room during the Bush administration when he blocked the signing of an order that he thought was illegal, and I applaud him for that. I think he was wrong 3 times last year. Every single thing he did was wrong, and the right thing to do as FBI director was keep his mouth shut. And conceal, no way. What we're talking about was this stash of emails, I think, on Anthony Weiner's hard drive, which no one had looked at. And to imply, which his announcement did imply, that there might be something bad there when it turned out there wasn't, I think was unprofessional.
All right, we got both sides of that argument. Let's turn to the politics of late-night comedy. Here was Stephen Colbert with his astonishingly crude attack on Donald Trump this week.
You're the president, but you're turning into a real prick-tater. The only thing your mouth is good for is being Vladimir Putin's holster.
Wow. And here was Jimmy Kimmel talking about the terrible news about his newborn son in the context of the debate this week over Obamacare repeal and replace.
Billy was born with a heart disease, something called tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia. No parent should ever have to decide if they can afford to save their child's life. It just shouldn't happen. Not here.
We should point out that Billy, the doctors at Cedars-Sinai were able to fix his heart, and he's going to be a healthy little boy. Your thoughts about both of those, Mr. Speaker?
The second one is part of the left's whole mythology. I mean, if you show up at a hospital with a brand new baby and the brand new baby has a heart problem, the doctors at that hospital do everything they can to save the baby. They don't say, we'll take care of the baby right after you write a check. They try to save the baby's life. And that's true across the board in this country. So that is just part of the mythology of the left. The problem you have with humor in America today is that Hollywood is so enraged at Donald Trump that they can't be funny. All they've got is pure anger. And that's what's coming out in this stuff. And then they think it must be funny because they're called comedians, so they exhibit their anger as almost a pathology on late-night television, and you're supposed to laugh because, after all, they're comedians. They ain't funny because they're too angry to be funny.
Juan?
Well, I think in the case of Jimmy Kimmel, I don't think there's any question. If you're poor in this country, if you don't have health insurance, your children are at greater risk. And yes, if you rush your child to the hospital, Mr. Speaker, yes, in the moment. But what we're talking about is long-term care and maintenance of that child's well-being. And I think there's no question you don't want to be poor and dealing with this healthcare system. President Trump said this week, Australia has a better system, Scotland, Canada. and he's changed, said, well, I didn't mean single payer, but I think it's pretty clear that in this argument, the American people clearly believe that a child like Jimmy Kimmel should be able to be guaranteed a healthy life without the parents worrying about insufficient funds.
All right, before we get to the other one, though, your reaction to that.
Just two things. There are 8,000 federal community health centers. If you're genuinely poor, you're on Medicaid everywhere in the country. And I think it's just, again, a part of the left's mythology. We do an enormous amount in this country to try to save people. And by the way, most of the people who didn't buy Obamacare insurance are young people who preferred to pay a tax to buy the insurance, so that Obamacare was not able to coerce them enough to make them buy the insurance. That's the largest single block of people who didn't buy insurance.
That's true, that they're the largest single block, but don't forget, Mr. Speaker, that in fact Obamacare was performing better than had been predicted. Even with that, but you have Republicans who intentionally sabotage, remove subsidies to create the system, a collapse in the system, to make it implode. And now you say, oh, but the system's not working, that's why we need a replacement.
So
I find this
Clinton
not
and
right.
The Republicans hurt Obamacare.
I just want to say, I think that Republicans should have been from the start working to create a system that works for the American people, rather than simply engaging in a system of trying to destroy Obamacare and obstruct improvements. And now I think Democrats should rise above it and do something to improve the current system. But this really is the original sin, to my mind, was Republicans saying, we're going to stop this no matter what. This is big government. Now everybody says you should have a right, as Jimmy Kimmel's kid should survive. Let me just finish up on, go back to Stephen Colbert for a second.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Colbert spoke in crude terms, but the suggestion that the FCC should get involved here is ridiculous. When should government suddenly be a censor of late-night comics?
It's over the air.
It is over the air.
The FCC controls it.
No, you know what? CBS should fire him. If they feel that there is a problem, let CBS act. The government and big government should not be involved.
I think what Colbert said was disgusting.
Right.
And if he had said something like, he or any other comic had said something like that with regard to Barack Obama, you can bet the guy'd be on or the woman would be on the unemployment. Just a moment, Jane. Having said that, I don't think he should be fired for having said it. I don't think that the FCC should get involved, and I suspect in the end it won't. What I think should happen is that people should be repelled by it and tune him out, and that will take care of the matter.
The important subject on this show is health care, and both parties are blaming the other party and gaming the 2018 and 2020 election. What about American health care? Why don't we think about how to build up a system that would serve everybody?
It's a nice thought, but we're so far away from that in this country today. I mean, I'm serious. Look, as you said, Obamacare passed without a single Republican vote, and this bill passed without a single Democratic vote.
But you have a chance in the Senate, which is a much more open institution.
Hey, if Newt and I can get along, why can't we do this?
I would love to see any Democrat willing to stand up tomorrow morning and say, I'm willing to work with Mitch McConnell to produce a better bill than the House bill.
Yeah. Think of this, Chris. Think of this one thing. Yeah. It's being said Republicans are now in dire political straits because they voted for this bill. Juan made the case for that just a few minutes ago. Think what would have happened had they failed again. So what we now have is a situation in the media and in the body politic to some extent where they're damned if they do and damned if they don't.
But it was 7 years, 60 votes, and they still don't have a better plan.
And I thought Rove and Gruber were going to be tough to control. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.